Tonight, we begin with a whisper, not from wind, but from something older, a tale that drips like rain through the cracks of memory. Not all monsters are born. Some are misunderstood, some are mourned. In the forests of Japan, there is a name the wind still carries, Jorōgumo, the spider woman who waits in rain. Light your lantern, still your breath, and follow the thread, for this story does not chase you, it waits. They say the rain in Japan has memory, that it does not fall, it returns, soft and slow, like breath, like regret. It comes not to wash away, but to remember what the world tried to forget. And when it rains for many days without stopping, when the wind forgets its name, when lanterns flicker though no one walks the path, people in the old villages still whisper, "She is near," they do not say her name. They speak of her only in metaphors, in trembling voices, as if she might hear. They say she appears not in thunder, not in storms, but in the still rain that makes no sound, but finds its way inside you. She wears the form of a woman, beautiful, elegant, a stranger who waits near waterfalls, her black hair clinging like threads, her smile a question without punctuation. But she is not woman alone. She is Jorōgumo, the spider who weaves desire, a shadow who waits for loneliness to ripen. She does not chase, she waits, because she knows the ones who walk into the web have already decided to be caught. This is not just a legend. It is truth dressed in silk, a thread pulled through centuries, unbroken, unseen, but always waiting. And tonight, as the rain begins, again, we follow it, into the mist, into the hush, into the story of the spider woman who waits in rain. Chapter 1. The Woman at the Waterfall. There is a place, nestled deep in the mountains of Japan, where the rain never fully dries, even in summer. Mist lingers like a forgotten breath. The trees there do not speak loudly. The rocks do not echo footsteps. And the waterfall the one locals call J-Ren Falls flows as if it remembers a secret it can never tell. It was near this waterfall that they say she first appeared, not with thunder, not with screaming, but with stillness. She stood among the reeds barefoot, soaked to the knees, her kimono the color of ash, her hair like ink unraveling. In the wind, she did not call out, she did not gesture, she simply was. Fishermen saw her first, tired men who had come not for fish, but for the brief forgetfulness that flowing water offers. They saw her from across the riverbed standing motionless, as if she belonged more to the mist than to the earth. They say she was beautiful, but not in the way flowers are beautiful. In the way storms are beautiful, silent until they strike, soft until they take something from you. One man approached. He was not brave, only curious, and curiosity, as the old stories warn, is the first strand of the web. He said hello. She did not answer, but she smiled a smile so precise, it felt like a blade hidden beneath silk. He returned the next day, and the next, each time. She was waiting, not a step away from where he had left her. Each time, she spoke a little more, her voice, they say, was low like rain falling. In a cave, like music you hear only after you stop trying. She asked him questions, where he lived, what he feared, what he dreamed of, when he dared to sleep. He did not notice the strange things, that her sleeves never dried, that her feet never left prints in the mud, that spiders began to gather near the rocks. He did not notice the way the web was tightening not around him, but within him. Desire has its own gravity, and she, Jorōgumo, knew how to step softly so that a man's own longing would lead him to the edge, and by the time he saw the web it would be far too beautiful to turn away from. Chapter 2. Threads that sing. The man began to dream of silk, not the silk of markets and robes, but silk that moved like wind, soft, endless, a shimmer that lingered on his skin even after he woke. He began to hear a sound at night, not music exactly, but something close like a harp made from thread, plucked by invisible fingers in the rain. No one else heard it. No one else saw her. He tried to speak of her once to a friend in the village inn, his eyes dark from sleepless nights, his hands twitching with a hunger he couldn't name. She waits by the falls, he whispered, every day. Same place. She knows things I've never said aloud. The friend laughed nervously. Maybe she's a ghost. Then softer. Maybe she's a trap. But the man shook his head. She listens. He looked to the window, where rain streaked the glass like weeping. She sees me, that night, when the moon rose pale behind the clouds. He walked again into the woods. The path bent strangely, as if guiding him not to a place, but to a fate. He reached the waterfall, and she was there as always. The rain did not touch her, or perhaps it belonged to her. She spoke of strange things, of spiders that live 100 years and learn to think like gods, of women whose longing grows so large it changes their skin, of webs so delicate they catch not insects, but souls. Then she sang. It was not a song with words. It was sound woven from breath and water, lullaby only the lonely could hear. And in that moment, he realized he had not spoken in days, that the world had grown quiet because he had stopped needing it. He belonged only to her, to this place, to this spell. And when he blinked, he thought he saw something behind her eyes, a shimmer, a flicker like legs moving beneath skin, like thread dancing behind flesh. He looked away, and she smiled again. He did not run, because when a web sings, you don't flee, you follow the sound until there is no sound left but your own breath in the dark. Chapter 3. The Man Who Didn't Return. They say it rained for 9 nights after that. The kind of rain that changes things soft at first, then persistent, until even stone begins to question its shape. The village grew restless. Children watched the trees bend without wind. Old women stirred salt into their tea. And the fisherman, the one who had once walked upright and laughing, was nowhere to be found. At first, they said he had gone to the next town then. They said he must be sick, resting with relatives. But on the 10th day, when no word came, they began to whisper what they'd feared all along. He went to the falls, not as a statement, as a sentence. No one went looking, not because they didn't care, but because they knew. You do not follow someone into a web. You mourn them from the edge. A boy curious and foolish crept close once, just to see. He returned pale, fevered, muttering of shapes in the trees, and a song he could not forget. And so they waited. The rain fell. The waterfall continued to speak in its endless voice of surrender, and deep within it, if you listen not with your ears, but with your fears, you could hear something else. Breathing, slow, constant, too large to belong to one throat, too rhythmic to be human. The villagers left offerings at their thresholds, rice, salt, small mirrors turned upside down. They didn't speak her name, but in their silence, they said everything. As for the man, perhaps he became part of the forest. Perhaps he learned to hum the thread song himself, or perhaps he was never a man at all, but a piece of sorrow that finally found a place to rest. Chapter 4. The house where time stopped. Far beyond the waterfall, where maps begin to blur and trails forget where they were going, there stands a house. Or perhaps it stood once. Now it simply waits. No one builds homes in that place. No one claims to know who made it. It appears only to those already lost, those who have stepped too far from the path, or too deep into longing. They say the house is small, but once inside, it stretches, not in distance, but in memory. Time does not pass there. It coils like thread, it hums, like the silk of a spider spinning itself into forever inside. There is no furniture, only tatami mats, a low table, and 1,000 strands of web that never gather dust. The walls breathe. The shadows shift like thought. There is no door, and yet one always appears just when you wish to leave and then does not open. It is said that she brings her guests here, not to trap them, but to show them something. Not pain, not death, but the truth they never dared to speak aloud. Some see their mother's eyes. Some hear the question they've avoided their whole lives. Some see themselves not as they are, but as they might have been, had no one ever lied to them. The web does not lie, it reflects. And when they finally fall to their knees, not in fear, but in understanding, she comes. Not from above, not from the shadows. She comes from within the house, as if she has always been there, as if she was the house, as if she was the part of them that waited to be felt. She does not strike, she does not speak, she watches, and in that gaze many weep, not because they are dying, but because they have never felt so seen then. The silk begins to fall, slow, shimmering, sacred, not a trap, a veil, and when it touches there, skin something inside them finally sleeps. Chapter 5. The spider who loved, before the tales twisted her name into warning, before she became myth whispered to restless children. She was something else. She was not always predator. Once, long ago in the time before time had edges, she felt something strange stirring within her, not hunger. Something softer, something human. The gods had cursed her with hunger. Yes, a hunger not just for flesh, but for presence, for warmth, for connection so deep it tangled itself in soul, and for centuries she obeyed. She lured, she fed, she disappeared. But then came a man who did not run, who did not flinch when he saw her many eyes, who did not scream when the shimmer of her illusion dropped away. He stayed. He said nothing. He only reached forward and touched her not where her beauty lay, but where her loneliness lived. And in that moment, something ancient in her fractured. The web around them quivered, not with threat, but with a question. Can even she be loved? She wove no trap that night. No silk fell from her hands, only trembling. For love is the most dangerous thing a predator can feel, because it turns instinct into hesitation. It makes the eternal vulnerable. She tried to keep him, not through enchantment, but through honesty. She showed him her true form, not monstrous, but immense, a body of legs and longing, 1,000 eyes blinking with centuries of solitude. He did not run, for many nights. They sat together in silence that wasn't empty, in stillness that wasn't lonely, but the world has little tolerance for love that does not fit its fables. The villagers came, torches, blades, praise on trembling lips, and when she woke to the smoke, to the man's absence, to the threads burned and broken, she knew love had made her visible, and visibility is always punished from that day. She wove her illusions not to seduce but to hide, to protect the only part of her that still remembered his touch, and the one she drew in afterward. Perhaps she devoured them, or perhaps she was only searching for a voice that once whispered, "I see you." Chapter 6. A thread between worlds. Not every web is meant to trap. Some are bridges, woven not to ensnare, but to connect. Jorōgumo learned this in the silence between centuries, when the forest forgot her name, and even the rain seemed afraid to fall near her shrine. She began to weave differently. Not from hunger, not from pain, but from memory. Each strand became a question, each not a fragment of dream. She wove the world as she wished it had been, a place where longing did not end in fire, a place where beauty was not punished for being strange, a place where monsters were simply misunderstood guardians. And as she wove, something strange began to happen. The air shifted, time loosened, and people began to pass through her forest, and emerge changed. They did not see her, but they felt her. The boy who no longer feared silence. the widow who stopped speaking to her dead husband and began to speak to herself, the painter who saw webbed in the branches and began to paint, eyes that had never been his own. All of them carried something back with them, a thread to find a name, but strong enough to anchor the soul. They called it coincidence, or madness, or grace, but it was none of these. It was her. It was Jorōgumo, not destroying, not haunting, but weaving a world where those who were lost could remember how to return, and those who lingered too long, the ones who could not go back. Perhaps they became part of her web, not prisoners, but prayers, unfinished hopes still shining in the rain. Chapter 7. Rain that remembers. They say it always rains where she walks, but not the kind of rain that floods, not the angry kind that drowns crops or chokes rivers. No, hers is the rain that lingers, the kind that softens stone, the kind that makes you pause at your doorstep and wonder why your chest feels heavier than usual. This rain remembers. It does not forget the names of those who vanished near the falls. It does not forget the silk-racked bones buried under roots. Nor does it forget the ones who walked away from her shrine with new shadows stitched to their heels. It falls softly, but with purpose, as if it is trying to tell you something. A warning, maybe, or an invitation. You see, in her forest, rain is not just water, it is her voice. When it taps your window at night, it isn't asking to come in, it's asking if you remember the story you left unfinished, the name you once whispered into the dark and then buried, the part of yourself you abandoned to survive. She remembers. Jorōgumo is not just spider or spirit or myth. She is the echo left in places that are never truly dry. She is the weight behind grief, the music behind longing. And so she sends the rain not to punish, but to awaken. Because somewhere. You've met her before. Not in Japan, not in legend. But in that moment, you wanted something you knew would destroy you, and stepped forward anyway. That choice, that ache, that memory, it still drips from the trees in her forest. It still hums in the rain. And if you ever find yourself walking too far from the village, if the sky begins to weep even though the sun is shining, listen, you might hear her thread song. You might feel your own name woven softly into the storm. Chapter 8. The Spider and the Mirror. There is a moment in every encounter with her when the illusion fades, not because she chooses it, but because you do. The eyes see only what they're ready to accept, and eventually, something inside begins to crack, not from fear, but from recognition. She does not change form. You simply begin to see what she has always been. Not a woman, not a spider, but something older, a mirror, made not of glass but of longing. Jorōgumo is not here to seduce. She is here to reflect. She holds no weapon, only truth. And this is the part of the legend. They never tell you that those who vanish into her forest do not vanish at all. They are found, not by others, by themselves, because in her presence there is nowhere left to hide, no face to perform, no name to defend, just the soft unraveling of everything false. She looks at you not to pierce, but to remind that the hunger you fear in her is the same hunger in you, to be seen, to be wanted, to be woven into something larger. And when you look into her many eyes, you do not see a monster. You see your own face, without masks, without mercy, without apology. She does not speak. She does not need to. The silence between you is louder than thunder, heavier than history. And in that moment, you must choose to run, to forget, to call her evil and never return, or to kneel, to listen, to let her finish the work you've been resisting your whole life. Because every soul carries a thread, but only a few dare to let it lead them into the dark. Chapter 9. The Shrine of Forgotten Names. Hidden deep in the forest, past where even the roots remember sorrow. stands a shrine. It is not marked on any map. It has no sign, no incense, no priest, only moss-covered stones and paper charms that flutter like wings in the wind. This is the Shrine of Forgotten Names. They say Jorōgumo built it, not with hands, but with memory for every soul who came seeking something and stayed. Here, the names are not spoken aloud. They are felt, etched into the silence, whispered by spiders who never sleep, sung in lullabies no mother dares hum aloud. Some come to the shrine with offerings, hair, blood, tears. Some come with nothing but regret. It does not matter. The shrine does not judge. It only reflects, like her, like the moonlit pools that gather beneath her webbed trees. If you kneel here, you may hear a name not your own, but one you once carried before the world made you forget it. A name of softness, of freedom, of being whole. And if you speak it aloud, even once, the shrine will shimmer, not with light, but with truth, and for that moment, you will no longer be lost. Not to yourself, not to the forest, not to her, because this place, this quiet gathering of stones and echoes, was never about worship. It was about remembrance. A place where those who were consumed by love, I fear, by the weight of longing, could become more than myth. They could become real. In the Shrine of Forgotten Names, Jorōgumo keeps them all, not as trophies, as threads, each one tied gently to her heart, so that no soul, once seen, is ever truly gone. Chapter 10. The Thread That Waits in Rain. Not every legend ends in flame. Some end in water, in mist, in a breath of wind that lingers long after the story is done. They say if you walk the forest after a storm, just as the last drops fall, just before the sky forgets its grief, you may see it, a single strand of silk, shining like moonlight strung between branches, too high to touch, too soft to break. It doesn't move in the wind. It hums, it waits, no longer a trap, no longer a snare, but a threshold, because the Spider-Woman no longer weaves to consume. She weaves to remember, to hold the ache of centuries, to cradle the hearts of those who once came seeking love and found reflection instead. She waits not for prey, but for pilgrims, for those who have heard the story not as a warning, but as a call to walk into the forest, not with fear, but with questions, to meet the shadow not with torchlight, but with tenderness, to kneel where the rain still whispers names, and feel not dread but recognition. And if you do, that final thread will not catch you, it will guide you, across the veil, into the hush, into the house beyond forgetting, where she waits not as monster, but as memory made flesh, and in her eyes you will not see death, you will see yourself, fully, finally, unhidden, and in that moment, perhaps the storm inside you will finally rest.